Okay, this is a slideshow on photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is one of those main topics in biochemistry, and it's quite commonly comes up in exams. There's 2 pages of syllabus objectives. Okay, so it's a long section. So you can use these pages to help you recap line by line. Have you got each of these covered? So I've taken line by line, and each slide has the part of the syllabus it refers to on the top. So now we're looking at the word metabolism. Now we're looking at the word metabolism. Metabolism is all of the chemical reactions that occur inside an organism. Okay, we can divide that into catabolic reactions and anabolic reactions. Catabolic reactions, they break down large molecules into smaller molecules, and they often release energy. Respiration is an example of a catabolic reaction. Anabolic reactions, they take smaller molecules, combine them together to make larger molecules, and they will need energy. So anabolic reactions will need energy. So in photosynthesis, solar energy is the energy used in an anabolic reaction to combine carbon dioxide and water molecules in order to make larger molecules of glucose. So photosynthesis is a big anabolic reaction, and the energy needed to do that comes from sunlight, from solar energy. So what is photosynthesis? The method by which plants make their own food. Okay, plants are autotrophs. They make their own food. Animals are classed as heterotrophs. Animals can't make their own food. They must feed on other organisms, and all food chains therefore start with plants. It's really important that we know the chemical equation for photosynthesis at the bottom: 6CO2 plus 6H2O. Okay, those are the reactants. They'll combine to form C6H12O6 plus 6O2, the products. Okay, it's a long sequence of steps, and that's the overall view of the reactants and the products. Okay, so it's really important that you know that equation there and you're quite clear about it. The essential molecule for this is chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is located in structures called chloroplasts. They're found in almost all cells. All green plant cells contain chloroplasts. But if you look at the leaf cells just underneath the upper epidermis, called palisade mesophyll cells, they're particularly high in chloroplasts. And chloroplasts contain this pigment called chlorophyll. So chlorophyll is actually a mixture of different chemicals, different pigments. They're all adapted to absorbing light at different levels, at different frequencies. And all of that energy is passed on to one reaction center chlorophyll molecule, and that's the one that releases the energized electrons. So there's a picture of a chloroplast, and the parts of a chloroplast, the grana, are the structures within the chloroplast that contain the chlorophyll. And we see that the light stage of photosynthesis happens in the grana, and the dark stage happens in the stroma, the liquid part of the chloroplast. And in this diagram, we have a couple of starch grains. Starch is stored as an insoluble, or food is stored as an insoluble pellet of starch. Okay. Now, to start to look at the overall view of the biochemistry. Okay. If we look at how sunlight affects water, so the splitting of water is called photolysis. Sunlight can split water up into oxygen, electrons, and protons. The oxygen could be used elsewhere within the cell for respiration, or it's released into the atmosphere. The electrons are passed to chlorophyll, because we'll see later on chlorophyll is losing electrons at a fast rate. And the protons, they're going to be stored in an area that we call the proton pool before they use to make glucose. Now let's look at the effect that sunlight has on chlorophyll. So as we said, we have all of these different chlorophyll molecules that react to different frequencies or different light intensities and different frequencies of sunlight. They pass all of their energy on to a reaction center chlorophyll, which releases an energized electron. So this energized electron is released from chlorophyll. Okay. Now, carbon dioxide is absorbed in through the stomata and makes its way through the air spaces to the palisade mesophyll cells. and we have the proton pool. Remember, this from the splitting of water, protons were building up in the proton pool. Okay, so we have protons from the proton pool. The H plus is electrons from energized electrons from chlorophyll, and carbon dioxide. So these three elements combine together to make glucose. Okay, the energy needed to do that comes from the fact that the electron is highly energized. It's been energized from sunlight. Okay. Now, where does the carbon dioxide and the water come from for photosynthesis? Carbon dioxide enters through openings called stomata in the leaf. Okay, some carbon dioxide can be produced internally by respiration. So the mitochondria is carrying out respiration, and a waste of that is carbon dioxide. So some carbon dioxide can actually be produced inside the cell. Water enters through root hairs and by osmosis and travels up to the xylem cell towards the palisade cells or the photosynthesizing cells. And the constant transpiration stream ensures that you have a continual flow of water upwards from the roots. And the sun is the main source of light for photosynthesis. Now we should know that we can increase the rate of photosynthesis by providing optimum conditions. A gardener can increase the rate of photosynthesis by using artificial light. To increase the light intensity greater than daylight, or by adding excess CO2 to increase the concentration beyond normal. So anything that makes it brighter than it normally would be, or more CO2 than it normally would be, will increase the rate of photosynthesis. The stage in photosynthesis at the bottom, where carbon dioxide combines with protons and electrons, is called the dark stage. The dark stage reactions are controlled by enzymes. Adding CO2 increases the supply of carbon atoms needed in the dark stage reactions. Increasing the temperature increases the rate of enzyme action in the dark stage. We're mentioning that here because we have to know, why does adding more carbon dioxide increase the rate of photosynthesis? And why does making it brighter increase the rate of photosynthesis? Making it brighter will increase the number of energized electrons being released, and adding more carbon dioxide will increase the number of carbon atoms that are available in the dark stage to make glucose. A mandatory investigation in this chapter is to investigate the influence of light intensity or carbon dioxide on the rate of photosynthesis, and we always do the effect of light intensity. So we have the setup in the description here. Light intensity is varied by moving a lamp a different distance to or from the pondweed. So the light intensity can be varied, and every time we move the lamp, we must wait 3 minutes to allow the pondweed to become adapted to the new light intensity. Okay, place pondweed in a test tube of pond water. Pond water will contain carbon dioxide from aquatic organisms. If it's fresh tap water, you could add some sodium hydrogen carbonate. An aquatic plant is used because it produces visible bubbles of oxygen, which can easily be counted. Temperature is kept constant by using a water bath, because temperature will affect the enzyme action in the dark stage. Carbon dioxide be kept constant by saturating the plant with sodium hydrogen carbonate. So adding some sodium hydrogen carbonate solution to the water inside the test tube will ensure that the pondweed doesn't run out of carbon dioxide. Okay, so the rate of photosynthesis is measured by counting the number of bubbles of oxygen produced per minute. So the last line here on the slide is really important. Counting the number of oxygen bubbles produced per minute. Okay, so as light intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis can also increase. Okay. Now, actually, I won't play this clip. This clip will be available in the slide version, and you can play that clip yourselves. As light intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis also increases as electrons are being released from chlorophyll faster. At high light intensity, the rate of photosynthesis stops increasing. So when it's super bright, the plant will eventually reach a maximum. It's not going to photosynthesize any faster because something is limiting it. It could be limited by the amount of carbon dioxide available. Okay. Now we want to look at it in a bit more detail. So this would be the higher level component. There are two stages in photosynthesis. Okay, these are called the light stage and the dark stage. And the light stage is called the light dependent stage. It requires light. It won't happen without light. Okay, the key thing that happens in the light stage is that oxygen, ATP, and NADPH are made. So that summary there is really important. In the light stage, oxygen is made, ATP is made, and NADPH is made. So looking at the diagram here, the light stage happens in the grana, and coming out of the grana, we have ATP, NADPH, and oxygen leaving the chloroplast. Okay, and required for the light stage to happen, we need water. Remember, water was split, and we have light. Okay, ATP is an energy-rich molecule, and NADPH is a molecule that carries electrons and protons. The dark stage is not known as the light-independent stage, and sometimes is referred to as the Calvin cycle. In the dark stage occurs in the stroma, in the liquid part of the chloroplast. And the end product of the dark stage is glucose. But also we'll see that some NADP is reformed, so it can be turned back into NADPH in the light stage, and ADP and P are reformed, and they are returned to be reused again in the light stage. Okay, now a little bit more about ATP and NADP. ATP is adenosine triphosphate. It's an energy-rich molecule. It's a molecule that contains high-energy bonds. These bonds are located between the second and the third phosphate. And if you look at what ATP is made from, it's made from adenosine, from ribose, and three phosphates. And the energy that's released when ATP is broken down is stored in the bond between the second and the third phosphate. Okay. ATP can store energy within a cell and transfer energy to processes that need it, such as growth, protein synthesis, and DNA replication. This cycle is known as the ATP cycle. Energy combined with ADP and P will form ATP. So ATP is constantly being broken down into ADP and P, and ATP and P is combined, so it's an anabolic process. It's combined with the presence of energy to form ATP. Now, NADP is an electron and proton carrier. NADP is capable of combining with electrons, and we say that it's reduced. So when NADP gains electrons, it's NADP minus, and that's capable of combining with protons to form NADPH. So NADP is an electron and proton carrier. It carries electrons and protons to reactions such as the Calvin cycle, the dark stage, that need them. Now, in the light stage, so just a summary of what happens in the light stage. In the light stage, sunlight energy is absorbed by chlorophyll. Energized electrons are released from chlorophyll, and they can follow two pathways. So we're just looking at this in pathway 1. So we just play this. This is the light striking chlorophyll. Chlorophyll releases energized electrons. These electrons are picked up by an electron acceptor. The electrons are passed on to various carrier systems. As they pass through the carrier system, ADP and P are combined to make ATP. Eventually, the electron is low in energy and will return back to chlorophyll. And that cycle will keep continuing. Okay, so that's pathway 1. The same electron is traveling through a carrier system, losing energy, ATP is being formed, and then it returns back to chlorophyll. Now looking at pathway 2. Okay. Now we have a look down here. First, in pathway 2, electrons from chlorophyll are passed to NADP, giving it a negative charge, NADP minus. Remember, this is called reducing NADP. So NADP is reduced to form NADP minus. NADP minus combines with protons from the proton pool. Remember, from the splitting of water, protons are building up in the proton pool. NADPH is used in the dark stage reactions. NADP carries protons and electrons from the light stage reactions in the grana to the dark stage reactions in the stroma. So NADP is an important molecule. In pathway 2, water is split using light energy into protons, electrons, and oxygen. The protons are transferred to a proton pool where they'll be used in the dark stage. The electrons return to chlorophyll, making ATP along the way as they pass along a carrier chain. The oxygen can be released into the atmosphere or can be used in respiration. Okay, so if we're looking at this, okay, so light hits chlorophyll, chlorophyll releases an electron. This electron is picked up by an electron acceptor before being passed on to NADP. So this is the reducing NADP to form NADP minus. Light strikes water, so this is the splitting of water. Protons are picked up by NADP, forming NADPH. This NADPH is going to be used in the dark stage. The electrons can return to chlorophyll. Along the way, they pass through a carrier system and make ATP. So these electrons are not returning to chlorophyll because they originate in water. And then the oxygen is released in respiration. So this summary at the end is really important. What's produced? What are the end products of the dark stage? Or sorry, the end products of pathway 2 are NADPH, oxygen, and ATP. Okay, so now we're looking at what happens in the dark stage. The second stage is called the light-independent stage or the dark stage. Okay, it doesn't require light, so it's called the dark stage. During the dark stage, carbon dioxide is absorbed by the plant. Carbon dioxide enters through the stomata, makes its way through the air spaces to palisade mesophyll cells, where it diffuses into the chloroplast, into the stroma of the chloroplast. So that we have our carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide is going to combine with protons. Protons are carried to the dark stage by NADPH. So that's the big thing. Carbon dioxide must combine with protons, and the energy needed for that to happen comes from the energized electrons that are being carried by NADPH as well. Okay, so this is an enzyme controlled process. Okay, so there's NADPH carrying protons and electrons into carbon dioxide, and the end result is there's the glucose that's going to be converted into starch, and to be reused in the light stage we had ADP and P and NADP. They're going to be reused in the light stage. Okay, and that's the general summary. Thank you.